habit to. So before the coffee break, you heard a lot of stories about startup companies, and we also told you about our program and the startup companies coming out of the university. When we were doing that for a couple of years, there were more and more companies coming to me that were growing, that were successful, and they said, we are facing different problems, different challenges than the ones when we started. Can you help us there as well? And then the answer we had to say was no, because our program is designed for the very first steps of starting a company. But when more and more companies came with the question about how to scale, we decided to design a program and run a network for that as well. And I'd like to share a couple of lessons that we have learned there. And these are not necessarily my lessons, because the issue of scaling is a worldwide phenomenon that you see in many countries coming up. In my city of Amsterdam, there's a lot of talk about scale-ups now. It's nice to have a lot of startups, but of course you want at least 1 out of 10, and preferably more, to grow faster and more to become iconic companies and create a lot of jobs, profit, and add to economic growth, because that's what startups do. They create jobs, and what entrepreneurs do, they create jobs and they add to economic growth. So the art of scaling is not something I invented. It is an invention, and I use a lot from his experience from Bill Reichert. Bill is a San Francisco investor, works very close, Garage Ventures, very close to maybe some of you heard of Guy Kawasaki. And they invest in especially software companies for a long time. Bill has a lot of experience, and we know him very well. And we talked about the lean startup, and Steve Blank is together with Eric Ries one of the leaders of the lean startup approach. Steve Blank is teaching as an American entrepreneur, a successful serial entrepreneur, teaching now at big university colleges in the US, entrepreneurship. And according to Steve, a startup is a temporary organization in search of a repeatable, scalable business model. But then, what is a scale-up? And there's Bill Reichert. And a scale-up is a different organization. As soon as you leave the startup phase and you go into the growth phase, your organization is more and more focused on generating more and more value, disproportionate, through rapid growth. And what you see in some of the lessons that we have learned is it becomes also less chaotic. It becomes more structured. It becomes more like a management thing. You see also a lot of entrepreneurs, I'm not sure how it's in Greece, but I see that in Holland, that the ones that start a company, and that are sometimes what the guy from the Cube said, the despotic people, but also the chaotic people who love to work in an environment of chaos. But as soon as the company grows, more and more people enter the team, enter the company. You need more structures, procedures. You have to start organizing things. You have to manage on metrics. And growth, it becomes more of a management role, and I see a lot of entrepreneurs at that stage becoming unhappy in the startup company because it's not what they like to do and what they're good at. I see a lot of them leaving the company at that stage or making room for others, which is a good thing. But I also see a lot of them who don't want to let go of the company and keep on that position, and that's very often a reason for failure. A very successful startup can fail because the original founder decided in the growth phase to hang on to what it was in the beginning and not go with the growth and scale-up phase. So let me share with you in the couple of minutes that I have very quickly And the presentation is available for everybody after this conference, that you can look at it more closely. The top 10 challenges that make the transition from startup to scale up. Like I said, the organization, when you're a startup, it's ad hoc, it's chaotic, it's all hands on deck, like we say in Dutch. People have multiple hats, they do basically everything in the company. And as soon as you get in the scale-up phase, things become repeatable. Roles are more and more defined. You get specializations in the team. And accountability is more and more an issue that people talk about and organize around. So the organization changes. And it means also something for the people, of course, working in that organization. If you look at the business model, in the startup, it's about testing and validating. It was talked about by several of the entrepreneurs before the coffee break that you have to find your customers. And as long as you haven't found your customers, you don't have a business yet. But when you're a scale-up, you have found these customers, and they're obviously there, and you're on the way to profitability, and you have found a business model, a fit to the market, and you have to stick to that. Your business model formula is more and more leading the way for your company, and the test and validation is behind. If you look at the team, in the beginning I like the picture that Robin showed of what you can call a band of brothers sitting around a table, a little bit rebellious, gonna conquer the world with their company. But as soon as you get in the scale-up phase, the high-performing team that was talked about by the founder of the Cube before becomes more and more important. The A players are key to the team, and no more C or D players are allowed in the team. The team has to become more and more high-performing. Culture, moving from passion, maybe also suffering in the beginning when things do not work out as you plan, to much more explicit company values, shared values, norms in the company. Also a major shift from startup to scale-up. Leadership, in the beginning it's a dictator. I like that word that was used before the break. The founders lead, they decide everything. They paint and lead the way, often by example. And in the scale-up phase, when the company grows and more people are on board, there are more leaders. And it's more of a management structure and much less of a startup rebellious founder structure. Product development, in the startup phase, when you're still looking for your customer, you go for minimal viable products. You test and you pivot and you validate and you try again. You fall and get up and try again. In the scale-up phase, it's much more stable. You have found your market, you have found your customer. It becomes stable, secure, and you can scale up the product. So scalability is and improvement of the process is much more in the center of attention. Sales and marketing, well, once again, customer discovery, very important in the phase of the startup, but as soon as you're a scale-up, things become repeatable. Also, your marketing and sales process become repeatable. You become more and more like an ordinary company. And it's important to stick to that, because if you're scaling and your growth is really, and you hit a sweet spot in the market and your growth is going fast, you have to stick to a certain amount of principles. Financial planning, in the scale-up phase, really about numbers, and hitting these numbers, tracking your numbers, and growing. Metrics are key. Funding, in the startup phase, is about selling the dream. It's about bootstrapping. I always advise startups with us to keep investors out as long as you can. Startups often have the tendency to say, yeah, I want an investor. And I say, why do you need an investor? And then it's often unclear. An investor for the sake of an investor, but my advice in the startup phase, keep the investor out. And if you ask investors, they usually say the same, although they won't say it in public. But if you ask them one-on-one, they say the same, yeah, it's good for a startup to keep the investor out and sell the dream. But in the scale-up phase, when you go to excellence and execution, they often need investors to grow. And then the investor comes in the team, and also the setup of the team and the way you work will dramatically change when they come on board. Whether it's a business angel or a VC, it will change the dynamics of the team and how you work, for sure. If you grow, and if you want to be big, you have to go international, certainly in a country like the Netherlands, and you have to have a global strategy from day one. I think the same will count for a Greek country. But for the startup, it's good to think global but act local in the beginning. You start in your own environment to work and build your company and find your sweet spot in the market. If you're the scale up, it's good to still think global, be global, but then you act global because there was also one of the companies presenting their international strategy before the coffee break from going from one country to the other. But you have to think local because the different countries, the different markets you enter are different. So it's just the other way around. Instead of thinking global, act local, you act global and think local.
So you have to be serious now. That's what you're saying.
In a way.
When
That's
you're
also
a startup, you're a little bit crazy, you're a little bit of a dreamer.
Yeah. I mean
when you're going to scale up, you have to be serious about
Of course,
that.
and of course there are all generalizations, and you cannot say that this counts for everyone. But if you look at certain patterns in the development of companies, that startups that become successful, hit the market and grow, you see tendencies, you see patterns that are recognizable. So these are the top 10 scale-up challenges that I discover in my daily work, and I hope that companies that are scaling up.
That's a good guide, by the way.
Three things to conclude. We like to use Vern Harnish very much when it comes to scaling up. It's the Rockefeller Habits. Maybe some of you know the book. It's used in many places in the world. It's American, which is all, on the one hand, a disadvantage because it's American and it's very American. But on the other hand, it's based on a lot of company experiences, and it's really a very structured approach to make your company grow. I also like the Scale-Up Excellence from two guys from Stanford who wrote the book. They really go for scaling up in a niche, so discover your niche and become a leader in that niche and very strong in that niche. That's a little bit different approach. And last but not least, it's maybe interesting to mention here in Athens, you see here a list of scale-up cities. And I see that Athens is not part of it, but it's an initiative of the Amsterdam city to connect all kinds of cities in Europe in a Scales.Cities network, where cities can learn from each other how to promote and how to grow the ecosystem for startups and scale-ups. It's just launched a couple of months ago. After a preparation of a year.
It's an initiative by whom? By the city of Amsterdam? It's
the city,
the mayor of Amsterdam, or?
Yeah, we have a program in Amsterdam which was launched I think 4 years ago. It was called Startup Amsterdam.
Yeah.
And the program aimed at bringing all the players in the ecosystem together, making them work together instead of compete with each other. So that
that was by the mayor of Amsterdam.
Yeah, basically the mayor of Amsterdam, and they discovered that this happened in many other cities in Europe as well, the same thing. So they teamed up, how they can learn from each other. And it might be interesting for the city of Athens to have a look as well.
Asking.
Yeah. Sir?
That's why I'm asking who is responsible in order to,
the
pass
mayor.
that idea.
So I'm not sure if the mayor of Athens is in the room, but...
we can pass the idea to some people.
Okay. So that's it. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks very much. That was interesting.